I'm still like, ooh, I haven't exactly reached planet Earth yet.
Cool, that's good.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I love how it sucks you in. It really does.
Yeah, well, we went to Universal Studios on the first Monday we got here. We had a bit of time, so we sort of shot down there and had a quick whiz around. And what was fascinating to me was, without really consciously thinking about it, how many of the amazing ways that they've constructed their experiences, what that has in common with what we're doing in VR. You know, like for the Mummy ride, which I completely loved it. But what was so powerful about that was, you know, you walk in and everything starts theming itself. You know, you start to get this sensation, but it's quite muted. And then when the ride starts, it's all nice and slow, and you're going through the sort of interior of the sort of treasure trove.
Yeah.
So that when Imhotep, or whatever his name is, suddenly sort of like pops up and screams at you, and it goes black, and you go shooting down this tunnel. That comes as this sort of incredible surprise, and it's so powerful because of that. So as you'll have just experienced, our introductory sequence sort of unwraps onion layers of the virtual world. So the shell around the tank opens up, and you're in a confined space, and then you go up in a lift, and it opens up into a much more impressive, larger environment. Then it forces you to look up as you go out into the open world. So at each stage you're like, oh wow, you know, and it sort of builds up. It's very carefully constructed. Again, not entirely unconsciously, with that sort of fairground ride experience in mind.
Exactly. Now, what made you choose VR specifically? Because this could easily have been done just on a normal console game.
It could, but I think the Kingsies would agree with me on the whole that for us the original arcade game is the grandfather of virtual reality. You know, that's the first time I can remember as a kid feeling completely transported into a virtual world. And it's the first person game I played, and especially if you were lucky enough to find one of the cabinets with the kind of like fake binocular thing on it, and you sort of pressed your face up against it, and although all you're doing is looking through a hole at the same screen that you'll be looking at anyway, that sensation of simulation was really powerful. And as a child, when you're more susceptible to those kind of illusions, that for the usually quite short duration of my games of Battlezone was totally transportive. I wasn't in the arcade anymore, I was in this virtual battlefield. And it was obvious to us early on that virtual reality was going to be the thing that recreated that sensation that we've been seeking for the last 20 years of game making, and is ultimately always going to be limited by your abstraction from the virtual world. No matter how detailed and rich you make your virtual worlds, you're always looking at them through a window, effectively. Yeah. And for the first time now, we can really do what we've been trying to do for years, which is put the player in that world. And I think that's a dream that for us began with Battlezone in the arcade. So it's rather beautifully come full circle. And it's a great pleasure and a great honour to be sort of holding the torch for that moment in gaming.
So what made you decide now to remake Battlezone?
Rebellion have always been experimental. We've taken risks with the games we've made, and we started this a couple of years ago now. It was a bit of synchronicity. I think the license became available sometime before that. I think Kingsley bought it with a view to what virtual reality might become, and made that connection with virtual reality. But they also acquired it because they're gaming geeks and they want to collect that sort of thing, I think. It's just come together nicely for us, and to be a release title with PSVR is fantastic. You know, it feels that's great for our studio, but it's in our DNA as a studio to experiment and to take risks with these new kind of formats. We've developed multiple formats for pretty much every product we've ever done, and we're well set up to do it. We are essentially an independent developer. And a relatively small team in some respects, but the experience we've got and the tools that we have allow us to take these kind of chances. And so, it seemed like a big risk at the time, I think, when we first started out. We didn't know where VR was going, but our early prototypes were successful enough to convince us that we were making a cool experience, and that's just gathered momentum as we've developed the game. Yeah, we're very proud of it.
I thought it looked great. The art style, I just love how it's kind of like a mixture between new age, futuristic, and the retro blocky style.
Yes.
It's kind of a nod to the original Wire.
Yeah, like vector graphics.
Yeah, exactly. Is there any other like nods to the original that you've done in this game?
Yeah, quite a few actually. There are lots of them are mainly for my amusement, but yeah. So the scanner thing that you see in front of you in the cockpit, that's a reference to the original arcade game, which has this circular top-down radar thing. I mean, actually, in VR, you look around, you find your targets that way. But that's there because it's a Battlezone game.
Yeah.
It sort of has to have it. The design of some of the enemy tanks is a direct reference to the original arcade game. And in the distance in the arcade game, there's this legendary volcano, which is 4 lines with a few pixels popping out of it, but was enough to create a sort of a mythos around it. There was a legend that you could make it all the way to the volcano in the original arcade game, which may or may not be true. I'm not going to dispel anybody's dreams about that. In our game, that's there.
That's cool.
You will make your way to that volcano, and the what's at the heart of that volcano is we refer to as it's a sort of a machine corporation that's taken over the planet, and it's called the Rotberg Corporation in honour of Ed Rotberg, the designer of the original arcade game, who I have the great pleasure of being Twitter friends with now, which is something I keep geeking out about. He retweeted a tweet of me wearing this shirt, having a celebratory drink. And I can't help it. I'm 44 years old, and I got very childishly amused by that.
Well, I love how you've taken all these nods to it. It basically turned it from just a VR tank game into actually Battlezone. And I love that. It's just, you've done so much work with this, and I was very impressed with it.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much.
It's one of the best VR experiences I think I've had in a
Cool.
long time.
Cool.
And now, I know that a lot of VR games are kind of like tech demos and stuff. How much content will there be in this game?
Well, yeah, we're very conscious of that. We make AAA games at Rebellion, and it was never our intention at all to just make a tech demo. From the ground up, this is designed as a full-blooded AAA game, and with that in mind, we've created a procedurally generated campaign that's different every time you play through it. And the structure to the game is one that's designed around the idea of replaying and replaying. So we have a bunch of different environments. You saw a glimpse of some of them at the end of the demo.
Yeah.
And a bunch of different mission types. So it's not just drive around shooting stuff. There are other goals. There are sorts of enemy bases to assault, defending locations and so on. So you have missions given to you as you go through. But all of this is jumbled up and procedurally laid out at the start of the campaign. So the maps and the missions are stuck together onto that hex map, and that hex map's procedurally generated. And indeed, the weapons that you've got available to you to take on the enemy with are procedurally scattered around in such a way that you'll have seen the pickups that you get. That's a currency that you use to kind of, on any given playthrough, you use to sort of upgrade your tank and purchase weapons at supply points. So yeah, I mean, I've been playing this game for a couple of years, and ordinarily by this stage of a project you're kind of a bit sick and tired of what you're doing, but we are still really enjoying playing this one, which is, I think, I'm very hopeful that that's common to launch titles on PSVR. I think we're very, very conscious of once the novelty isn't selling it on its own merits of VR, which again, I've spent a few hundred hours in VR now, and that novelty doesn't go away. But the software that we create in this first year has got to support that and make people glad they bought the hardware.
Exactly.
Like I say, it was never on the table to do anything other than make a proper AAA game.
That's good. Now, is this going to be exclusive to PlayStation VR?
We're concentrating on PSVR for the launch. We've announced on Oculus Rift, but we've got no dates to announce for that.
Now, what date will it be releasing on for PlayStation VR?
October the 13th with the hardware. the release title for it.
Nice, that's so great. Well, thank you so much for talking
Thank
with me.
you very much.
I enjoyed the game.
Great, that's good to hear.